Hello, today I am joined by Nathan and Eliza of NeuroPlaces. Could you start with a bit about you for our listeners, who you are and what you do?
Hiya, I'm Eliza, founder of NeuroPlaces and mother to our neurodivergent daughter, who's called Orla. She's our mini co-founder. She's 6 and she has autism and suspected ADHD. And she's basically the reason behind our creation of NeuroPlaces.
Yeah, I'll echo most of that. I'm Nathan, business partner and husband to Eliza, yes. And Orla is our inspiration for the world, or our entry into the world of neurodivergency. We're not sure that either of us are neurodivergent, we don't know yet, but it certainly comes from our lived experience with Orla and how she sees the world, really, and how we're trying to sort of adopt to see her world a little bit more.
And you mentioned that all is kind of your reason for starting NeuroPlaces and sort of what led you to it. Was there a moment that you sort of thought, actually, yeah, this is what we want to start and this is why? Or was it sort of an accumulation of things that led you there?
I think we knew quite early with Orla. She was diagnosed at 3, coming on to 4, so just before school. But for me, my moment was we were at a big family festival at a farm in Sussex, and Orla was quite dysregulated. She's got a lot of sensory sensitivities, and she kept returning to this place that was in the woodland area where they had like hammocks and swings and climbing frames, and she kept wanting to go back to this specific hammock. And it was only until afterwards, when I reflected on it, that she was self-regulating, and I learned that that's what she was doing, which enabled her to stay at the festival. So us as a family of 5, because we've got 2 other children, were able to stay and enjoy the day. And that was solely because she had somewhere to go. And I believe if that hammock wasn't there, such a simple thing, we would have had to have left after a couple of hours because it was so busy and noisy, but that was her place to go. And that was really important for us as a family.
Yeah, I can see how important that would be. And then thinking then about places that perhaps don't have that. And, you know, they naturally had those hammocks there in that darkened space, probably with a bit of white noise from the trees.
Yeah.
But places that aren't intentional about that and don't have that, there's kind of then that sort of nudge, I suppose, from what you're doing with NeuroPlaces. It's like, here, look, this is what you can be doing. And also let's celebrate what people are already doing.
Yeah, and it's actually few and far between, to be honest. Going to places, there's never really provision. The places aren't designed with the neurodiverse mind, really. It's all, not always, but most of the time, it's for the neurotypical mind. And I think, as that's one of the reasons why we are doing NeuroPlaces. We want to reduce that, what's the inclusion gap in places, especially public places. And in 15, 20 years' time, Orla and other individuals can have better experiences in the built environment.
Yeah, which is such a great kind of aim and passion and a heart behind what you do. It's really brilliant. So tell me then a little bit about your experience of travel as parents. So you touched upon somewhere there that you've been. What about kind of generally travelling, whether that's within the UK or further afield?
Well, we're quite avid travellers. I mean, it's been part of my life, especially since I was 18, really. And we love travelling, we love eating, we love food, we love culture. So we try to do that with our kids, but it's always been a bit hard. I mean, fun experience. I mean, we've done a few flights, 1 to 2 hours, and a couple to the Canaries or Cyprus. It's like 4.5, 5 hours. And I just remember, by the 4th hour,
well, it was the third. It was
utterly bonkers.
It never again. Maybe in the future, but currently,
it was quite hard.
Yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah, but I feel like it's challenging on an aeroplane. And I do think that airlines would have a tough time making their fleets really include, as neuro-inclusive as possible, because it's tight, it's contained. The seats are very close to each other. So the physical aspect, I don't know what they could do. But you said earlier, a good idea, didn't you?
I think when you've got restraints naturally in the environment that you can't really change, you have to look at all the other ways you can make it better for that individual. So I think awareness, we all know, is key. So I said to Nathan, something as simple as there's probably 4 or 5, probably more, neurodivergent children on each flight. And I'm not just talking about children, adults as well. How can we make the rest of the people on the flight aware of these individuals and what struggles they might be going through. So even as simple as, at the beginning of the flight, the pilot could announce, just to make everybody aware, we have a child with autism in aisle number, there may be some behaviours demonstrated that might make you feel uncomfortable, just be aware and please be patient. I think that for us would be a game changer, because all I'm thinking the whole time is, gosh, how is this impacting everybody else on the flight? Because Orla clearly has ADHD as well. And to sit in a seat confined is so hard for her. So she'll be almost, it's like a tick. She'll be ticking. She'll be really loud. She'll be moving. She'll be kicking the seat in front. And it's just, I think 2 hours really for us is maximum now.
Yeah.
And that's quite restrictive when you want to travel with your family. So
I think as well at the airport, before you even get on the flight, that's where I think there's probably a bit more scope for change and manoeuvre. I've spoken to a lot of people, not a lot, but a few people now, with regards to virtual understanding of venues, like mapping. So Orla has a lot of anxiety pre-going somewhere, and I think that's quite a common trait in neurodivergency. If she can really understand the route from going through security, going to a room, going to the lounge, or to a gate, that would help.
Yeah, visualising it.
Visualising simulation would be really good.
3D mapping.
3D mapping.
Yeah.
And also, I've got to shout out to British Airways, not a plug intentionally, but they have, at Gatwick, within the lounge, they have a child's play area, which is obviously only really if you're able to use the lounge. And we wrote to them and asked them what their provisions were for autism, and they very kindly let us use the room just for half an hour to get all off the main concourse, etc. And it was really great. Now, I'm not saying they should do that for everyone, but it's like there's a gap there. So I think the airports really should improve their sensory room provision.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they got one there, but the sensory room's tiny.
But we weren't made aware of the sensory room.
No.
Even after saying we had an autistic child, we went to the lounge instead. But people in the lounge are trying to relax with a champagne. So still, we're feeling very awkward walking through the lounge with our child that's, highly energised and needs a space to be able to regulate. So we had to put her in a little room and shut the door, but it still wasn't catered to her needs. It was just what we could use at the time.
Yeah, something that's better than being out in the main airport, but still not meeting her full needs, like you say.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that airports are highly stressful places for everyone, to be honest with you. The rush, the constant, am I going to make it on time? The checks, they're taking the bags off, the liquids.
But those are things you can't really change. Because an airport is an airport. People are busy, people are trying to get to places, but there are many aspects within it that I think you can adapt. So I think that's the approach they need to take. They can't change the whole encompassing experience of an airport.
I think they could. I think, sorry to disagree, but I think lighting is one thing. Strip lighting. Can they put more biophilia in there? I know it costs money. Those small touches could make a bit of a difference as opposed to such a clinical environment. I mean, we're not outing airports. They have a purpose in it, and it's just the way that they've been designed through no fault of their own. But I think in 20 years' time, I think there probably should be some changes. Really.
And you kind of mentioned there about how they can be stressful for everybody. And so making lights slightly dimmer or slightly softer on the eyes actually would benefit everybody as well as those who are neurodivergent. And so it's like a brilliant business decision to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you already need to change your lights.
And also, they'd save money on electric bills, essentially. I know that sounds silly. It really, and this goes back to the whole movement and approach towards catering for neurodiversity. It goes to, I know this is separate, but in the workplace where people are more efficient, there's less sickness, if you're catering towards and making better provision. And I suppose it's the same for airport experiences or holiday experiences. If you do make a few tweaks, you get happier people who are more willing to pay more to come back year after year. And that's probably not, the airports, but at resorts. Now, I know there's TUI are doing some big things with regards to their Neuro-Inclusive travel as a whole. And if, having sort of heard from them that commercially that's been great because families like us, because we would now consider using that as a holiday option. If it's from booking to getting home, neurodiversity is factored into the planning, that's potentially going to get our pound spend.
It's got to be wraparound neuro-inclusivity. Like Nathan was saying, the whole experience from the booking, the traveling itself, then when you get off the other end, like, the whole experience. And then I think that for businesses like airports, if you get a neurodivergent customer who enjoys their time with you, they will come back because they enjoy routine and repetition. So if Orla had a holiday and an experience at an airport that she found she could cope better with, we would definitely be going back. Yeah.
Well, we do that.
Yeah.
We go to the same campsite in France. Lovely little campsite in the Dordogne in Limoux. It's on the river. It's wonderfully calm, and they know it. They know exactly what they're getting when they're there. So I don't know. It works, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It helps with that expectation, doesn't it? You've got the social stories like you were talking about, where you can do the mapping out and the videos. But if you've already been there before, then for Orla and for all of you, you know what to expect, and so that's a real positive thing for going back. And yeah, we're kind of hoping to talk to somebody about the Purple Pound on our podcast, because that's very much that sort of untapped market that you're talking about, where people will come and spend if it is wraparound and neuro-inclusive and accessible. Yeah. So on the flip side then, what is a really positive or joyful travel moment for your family?
I think Limoux was great. Wonderful campsite. It just evokes wonderful memories. It's calm. It's on the river. It's just beautiful.
I think like the destination when we get there, if we choose the right one, can be wonderful. It's the travelling to and from, so the transition between home and the place, that is never enjoyable. Quite frankly, with an autistic child, it is not enjoyable. There are like touches along the way that you think, oh, that was great. Even a small thing like a staff member who is aware and gives you some empathy and patience with your child. Little touches can really help. But overall, travelling is really hard.
On that note, and I don't know, and apologies to service station providers here, because this won't be a particularly nice comment, but travelling in the UK in a car and stopping off at services is woeful, absolutely woeful. I mean, the provision, not only for neurodivergent, but just for children is appalling. There's nothing. You're driving in a car for 2 or 3 hours with kids. Kids are going to be going crazy. Irrelevant of if they're on the spectrum or not, and there's nothing there. There's nothing. I understand that there's a certain brand that might be trying to do this, which is great. But if you go to France or Netherlands, you're stopping at services, and they have park provisions at most of them. Kids can burn off some steam for an hour or half an hour. I think that is an area that this country drastically needs to improve on. Drastically, because that does sort of impact the overall experience of a journey.
And when you're limited with travelling on an aeroplane, and you might have to do more of road travel and train travel, having those better than they currently are would make a difference.
Yeah, because we've learned that maybe flights aren't so great for us at the moment. And not just because of Orla, but we've got a 1-year-old as well. And so we will travel in the car more. And certainly I think we'll go to France because a 7-hour journey is just much nicer than here.
And have you had any kind of positive experiences or negative experiences with things like triggers like food? Because that can be a really big thing when you're travelling as a neurodivergent person or child.
We're lucky Orla's a really good eater.
She is. I'm just trying to think food in particular.
A lovely experience was in Spain early part of this year. We went to Malaga. And the kids were just absolutely devouring seafood, and that as a parent who loves his food, I was really proud of them eating squid and octopus and whole fishes, and that, just dug right in. That was a nice experience, actually.
I can't think of one particular within travel, but I know that safe foods are really important, and I feel like flexibility in terms of allowing customers to have access to their safe foods is really important. So not just saying, you can't eat your own food, you have to eat what's on the plane or whatever, which I don't think they do. Yeah, but it's all thinking about everything, isn't it? Sensory profiles and how do people cope with smelly foods that are being served as well. Like that can be really uncomfortable for Orla, actually. But she's so great at masking, I don't think she'd make a fuss out of that. But I can see how that would be really difficult for some people.
I think as well, when you look at the much bigger picture, if you use Spain again as an example, they really facilitate for children. So if you go into a town or a square, there'll be bars or restaurants, cafes around a park for kids to play in, so that the parents can have a beer or coffee and the kids can be safe in the park playing. It's just a wonderful attitude and outlook to have. And also the approach to children in I'm not going to say every country, but Mediterranean countries generally is better. They're more sort of accepting of kids being loud or, running about. Whereas I think sometimes here, maybe not. But,
they need to move. They need to move freely and not be kind of, embarrassed about that.
Yeah. But then that goes to a whole macro, educating people from a young age. And that's, it's quite, that's probably a different conversation, I think.
Yeah. Do you think then actually one of the things that could make the biggest change for an experience for you as a family with a neurodivergent child when you're travelling is having some people who are educated? So like the airline staff perhaps being educated, or the people at the airport, or the people once you get there.
Game changer.
Yeah. Well, that particular flight we had.
We had one particular flight. I don't know how I didn't self-combust. It was, Orla just couldn't cope.
Yeah.
But we couldn't really either. It was just, but you could tell that the airline stewardesses, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just, didn't really know what to do. And I think if there was just one team member that was trained, they could have come over and really sort of helped us to gain a bit of control. If they had some strategies they could have used, a bit of flexibility around Orla, not having to sit in her seat. I think they could just make some real small changes and really help families just feel more included.
Yeah, definitely. And things on aeroplanes, like especially long haul flights, and I know for now you're restricted to quite short haul, but on long haul flights, you rarely ever know when they're going to be serving snacks and dinner and drinks, and you just sort of go, they've started serving. And to know that in advance would be really helpful for everybody, but also especially for people who are neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, that would really help.
So it all comes back to communication, doesn't it? It's kind of understanding and communication, and then putting that wraparound support in place, because it's never going to be the same one person's child to another person's child or adults.
Exactly.
It's kind of everybody's a bit tailored.
And back to the 3D mapping, if you could do that on an actual aircraft as well, that would be amazing. Because Orla, the moment she sort of sees something that's new and she's unfamiliar with, that's going to cause anxiety, which leads to behavioural issues, and outbursts. So if she could have sat, she would have probably done it over 10 times before we went on holiday. She would have sat and watched where she was going. So even just going up the stairs, seeing the pilot and, looking at all the seats virtually, that would have really helped her.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that they can implement kind of without too much trouble, isn't it?
And there are lots of companies, there's one in particular we've spoken to, who are doing great 3D mapping. So it definitely exists.
Yeah, and you're in control, aren't you, with those 3D maps? You get them when you're kind of looking at a house quite often.
Yeah.
You're able to click into the next place and turn around and
I believe it's a very similar technology, Matterport style, but just on a much bigger scale. We're trying, the aim of the show, actually, one of them will be to try and get, stadiums or supermarkets or airports or whatever to meet these vendors, because they might not know it's an option at the moment. And I think they're not going to be crazy I don't know, actually, but I don't believe that they're ridiculously expensive to import into the museum or whatever. But would probably yield more business. So that's one of the aims of the show, is to get the venues and the workplaces in front of the suppliers and the vendors, who can teach them and give them tangible things to go away with and implement.
Sensory mapping is another really good one. In a venue, highlighting the particularly noisy areas, the quieter, darker areas, a place to go if you need to regulate. If you've got a quiet room, so they're great. There's some museums in London, I can't remember exactly which one, that have got some amazing facilities.
Battersea Art Centre are doing quite good stuff.
And the Post Museum in London, you can go on and they've got these incredible maps that you can look at before you go. And I think that's just would help so many people.
Yeah, that's so helpful. And it means you're able to see what there is there that might be helpful that you perhaps wouldn't have known if the map didn't exist, like the sensory space in the airport that you missed because you weren't told about it.
Yeah, where are the toilets? That can be quite anxiety inducing if you don't know where your toilet is. Orla finds toilets quite she needs to know where they are and she needs to go in and look at them. So
straight away.
she's
Yeah.
only 6.
So with NeuroPlaces then, can you kind of tell our listeners in a nutshell what that's about?
Shall I go?
Yeah.
So it's the first B2B trade show conference to reduce the inclusion gap and improve design. So not just the physical built environment, but digital design as well in public venues and workplaces. And this obviously came from our experiences with Orla, researching that, and there was not an event like this. And so much facts and statistics are sort of building towards this. I believe in the UK, about 20% of the UK population are diagnosed as neurodivergent, yet only 5% of public venues are adequate enough or designed with them in mind. So that's the inclusion gap that we are trying to host and have a platform to reduce. So there'll be exhibitors there, and there's a conference, there'll be sort of 40 sessions, breakout workshops, and roundtables, which will be a bit more intimate and maybe a bit more bespoke end user groups. So it's quite a large demographic of people who will be coming. So you've got visitor attractions, or you've got big stadiums or airports, etc., hotels, airlines, that sort of stuff. So yeah, they can be a bit more bespoke for that sector.
That's brilliant. And then the people who are coming along, presumably will you have a mix of people who are trade people coming along and people who are perhaps just travellers / people going about their daily lives that have neurodivergent diagnoses, or children who are neurodivergent?
Well, it's no, yes and no. So it's more of a business to business show. But then
Sure.
obviously within businesses, there's lots of people who are neurodivergent. So there will be a catchment of people who are neurodivergent. And what we're trying to do with our show next year is to ensure that NeuroPlaces, it's in October of next year, 2-day show, will be from arrival, booking your ticket, registration, going through to the event. We're going to make our event as neuro-inclusive as we can. So, that's sensory and lighting and smells and biophilia, sensory rooms, this sort of stuff. Be a tough job, and we could completely get it. Won't be perfect. There'll be some areas that aren't completely inclusive. Yeah, what's inclusive for one person is not inclusive for another. So it's always going to be a bit challenging. But we're working with the venue, which is the Business Design Centre. It's a very old, wonderful Victorian building that will naturally have some challenges, and we're working together as well because they want to become more inclusive with their venue as well. So yeah, I think it's a kind of like a pilot, but quite needed, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like it's going to be a really great space for people who are, like you say, those sort of vendors who can provide extra inclusivity and accessibility technology or consultancy or whatever it is, with the businesses that can benefit from
Well, that's it. And that the exhibitor profile, I suppose we could call it, is quite diverse because, you can have someone that can design lighting, for sensory, and you can have someone who can design sensory furniture or sensory flooring, someone who's a sensory room provider, a consultant, a trainer, and then the wayfinding or wayfaring signage, way mapping. Yeah, so it's quite a lot. It could be a really diverse set of people there. And then you've got the architects and designers who implement, they have the contracts with the venues and trying to, make sure that they implement neuro-inclusive design. So it'll be very diverse and very much the first of its kind. Yeah, first show next year. We'll see how it goes.
I think one key thing to say is it's about providing a platform for collaborations. It's a space for people to connect and make change, not just talk about it, not just go to a conference, listen to these lovely ideas, but then not actually go and implement change. We want change to happen. So we want people that are coming to go home with business cards of people who they can connect with and that can come to their venues and their spaces and implement change to benefit everybody, not just neurodivergent people, it's everybody. So yeah, I think it's really important.
It sounds brilliant. And like when I first saw about it before kind of reaching out to Nathan, like I just got really excited about kind of that platform that you are building for that collaboration.
Right.
It just sounds really, really exciting.
Yeah.
And it's touching on a topic that's really important.
Yeah, well, that's the general feedback, actually. It's, before in the summer, when we were doing our due diligence and research, we were reaching out to some pretty big organisations, big organisations with no footprint, no digital footprint at all. And we were getting responses and having video calls with individuals, and we were thinking, crikey, there's definitely a need for this show. And the support we have so far, we've launched a show with Transport for London, the Greater London Authority, especially the London Mayor's Office part, all very supportive and collaborating with us. And that's given us that gave us quite a lot of like kickstart to say, well, actually, there is definitely a need for this. It might be, it's quite early though. A lot of people are, the journey of like designing with neuro-inclusivity in mind, I think as we touched on earlier, it's quite early in its development. It feels as though it's like the sustainability question 10 years ago. Right then it was like, it's a nice to have, but it's not a must have. And that seems to be where we're currently at with neurodiversity. However, in 5 to 10 years, I guarantee you that'll be a completely different equation. It won't be like, are you designing with neuro-inclusivity in mind? It'd be like, oh, you're not doing that. Okay. It might sound presumptuous, but it's the only way it can go. With 20% of the population and 15 to 20% of the world's population being potentially neurodiverse.
You can't ignore,
it's huge.
You can't ignore that. And you can't ignore the lived experiences as well that are vital. That's core to our movement, the lived experience of people. We're collecting stories from people with ADHD, autism, finding out what their experiences are and what changes would help them, because these design changes need to come from the individuals that are experiencing it. So it's designing with them and for them, I think, is important.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a topic that I hear come up all of the time about. You can't design for somebody without kind of asking somebody first. And so, yeah, it's that whole thing around lived experience and trusting what they're saying. And
part of our conference will be a lived experience, won't it? We're going to have a session.
I think it'd be quite nice to have, decision makers from, I don't know, let's just say someone from a big supermarket chain or someone from a big airline chain or an airport group, all in a room with neurodivergent individuals and them saying, well, actually, this works. That's terrible. Yeah. And having them sort of sit there thinking, okay. Because, hopefully it then makes them go back and say, actually, I think we do have to change this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it highlights that stuff that perhaps others might be a little bit either scared to bring up, anxious to bring up, or just there isn't the opportunity to bring it up.
Exactly.
And you crack on because you're used to cracking on, and then you've forgotten about it and you move on.
Well, that's it. And that's what the other part of the show is for the workplace as well. So it's a bit different to the travel, but I suppose it's still linked because, within the travel sector, it's also a workplace for many individuals. So making sure that the environments are good for the public, but also at the same time, how is that working out for the employees? So that's, I think, really important. Imagine being neurodiverse and working in an airport for 8 hours a day with the lights and the noises. That could be very challenging, I think.
But like we said, going back to awareness is really key. Yeah. So just making the staff aware that you are aware and that it's a process that's always evolving. So you're never going to get it right for everybody at one moment in time. It's just going to be changing all the time, and having that open communication, I think, is really important. Like we visited the RNIB in London, brilliant place for neuro-inclusivity. She's Trish. She spoke about open communication. Staff can go to her with basically anything within the office environment that might be bothering them, and action is then made based on that. And I love that. I think that's so important that people feel they can come to you about, the light above me is causing me stress. When we talk about what we can do to change that, and they really listen and they take that seriously.
Yeah, that's excellent. And like a real example of what employers can be doing.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, people who want to come to NeuroPlaces, what dates is it in October 2026?
29th and 30th of October 2026 at the Business Design Centre London. Nearest tube stop is Angel, 3-minute walk. So yeah, obviously very accessible in the sense that it's quite easy to get to. Well, not for everyone, but it's 4 airports, lots of trains. And that's going to be our flagship show. It's going to be the first one of its kind. So, I think it's really important to sort of mention as well, it's not just a UK-centric show. This is a global thing, neurodivergency. So we're attracting people from all around the world to come to this. So it's truly a global show.
Fabulous. So going back to travel, dream trip. If you could go anywhere tomorrow with 0 barriers, where would you go?
I think we've got to make our decisions based on the children now, selfishly. But I think safari would be nice, wouldn't it? Because they love animals so much.
Yeah, but I can't even fathom.
12-hour flight to South Africa might be
a
bit of a challenge. But where else? I think safari would be good.
I mean, we've got a family apartment in Cyprus, but we've never gone there with Orla, have we? Because the flight is 4 to 5 hours. But for a quick, getaway, that would be ideal because we would save money because we'd have accommodation, but we can't go there.
I think more realistically, Spain's great. And I think Spain's good because of the family-centric vibe of the nation. It's just wonderful. The food's great. The climate's amazing. We went in February this year. It was 24 degrees. So that was perfect.
But I think in answer to your question, we would go somewhere a bit further afield, without having to worry about how Orla will feel. We don't want to put her under more anxiety than she faces already in her day-to-day life. Going to school, things like that, social interactions, it's all hard for her. So anything that alleviates that, we embrace. So going on a long journey to somewhere exotic would be wonderful, but we can't do it with an autistic child. We just can't at the moment, but we're hoping to change that for the future.
And I think it's so important to think about these things in terms of dreaming big. If you could click your fingers and be anywhere, where would you be? Because then we can start to think about how we bring that to the UK. Lapland are doing a Lapland experience in the UK this year, where they're sort of bringing the experience of Lapland within the UK, and that means that you don't have to travel all the way to Lapland to have that experience. So I think the more we talk about where can we go, like safaris, what then safaris could we bring to life in the UK? I know there are a few, to kind of have that closer for those people who can't travel as far.
Yeah, I've never thought about it like that. That actually would be amazing. And for those families that can't even go on an hour's flight, there's families that can't even do that. So we're lucky that we've been able to go to Spain and France with Orla, because I do know of somebody whose son won't get on a plane, full stop. So yeah, that's a great idea, bringing experiences closer.
How do you bring the nice sunny weather though, Amy?
Well, yes.
And the sandy beach.
So our final question that we like to ask all of our guests is what we call our magic wand question. So it's if you could change one thing about travel or tourism to make it more inclusive, magic wand, it'll be done. What would it be?
I would like everybody who works in the travel industry to have better awareness about neurodiversities, because I really think that would just make the whole experience so much easier. If Orla's having a meltdown, I don't want people looking at her and thinking, she's a child that's out of control. Her parents don't know how to parent her and she's being naughty. If people could, she had a sunflower lanyard on, people could look at that and recognise she's neurodivergent. The environment is causing her stress. It's real, and she can't cope at the moment. If a staff member could come over and give us some assistance in that moment, for me, that would be a game changer.
Yeah. I agree. But then it's all about resource, isn't it? Often on an airplane, they're so busy. I don't know how feasible that always is going to be, but definitely understanding might be. I think better provision at the airports actually would be good. Larger space for kids in general to run around, not just neurodivergent children, but, are there some separated play areas, which is away from the main body of the airport, so you don't have to worry about intruding into someone's morning or afternoon or whatever. I think that would be good. And maybe a more seamless check-in would be great. I think a dedicated security or whatever area where, because we've had some issues before with going through the
she finds it really anxiety inducing. Something about that.
She doesn't like it.
Because the people are being searched and she can see them being touched. And she hates going through there.
Well, you can use a wand, I think, to check.
Yeah.
But I think a completely separate area. I know they have different areas for families, but they're always really busy as well. They're just never at. But I get it. The challenges are I think they're very difficult for the travel sector. I do. I think it's very hard. But I think communication maybe is probably the best, just so families don't feel as awkward. And free champagne on the flights for the parents would be nice as well. Or whiskey.
Well, thank you both so much for coming onto our podcast and sharing your lived experience, but also letting us know about your really awesome upcoming B2B conference with NeuroPlaces. I hope that goes really well. I'm sure it will. And it's exciting that that's going to be the very first of its kind, meaning there is more to come. So Thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for listening. I'm Amy Walters, brand and design expert. Our aim is to make tourism work for everyone, powered by lived experience and expertise.
And I'm Louisa van Vessem, a consultant, mentor and facilitator. And together we help tourism businesses build inclusive strategy and design that actually works.
You can find us online at Inclusive Tourism on Instagram and LinkedIn, and check out the show notes to connect with us.
See you soon.